Wait to get
No, that's great.
That's good. Nobody does timing, right? All right. Good morning, everyone. We are going to call this committee meeting to order. It is 10 o'clock. Hi. This meeting is for the municipal broadband. What do we call that?
Community broadband program, which we're
Yes.
calling Surge Link.
Surge Link. Yes. Okay.
Fun name.
And I have with me counselors, excuse me. Yes. I have with me Counselor Nave, Counselor Peniagua, Counselor
Come on. Caldwell.
Caldwell. Counselor Caldwell.
It's Monday morning,
Yes,
Counselor. It's
it's
okay.
Patrona. That one go.
And Counselor Williams. I am so sorry. I'm not used to her being on this side
I
of the
know,
room.
over that
okay. That threw me off.
Believe it or
All
not,
right.
it's stressful doing introduction.
Yes. And we have Jen Tiff and her staff, and you can just tell us about the program. And this is more or less a program extension, but we do want to have
Right.
some look back on the first rollout as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a few slides to walk through, and we're going to try to get through some of this as quickly as we can, because we want to leave, obviously, the majority of this time for everyone's questions, and hopefully to have a dialogue about, where things can go with this. So we're really excited to provide an update. As Councilor Jones-Rouser was saying, we've got a couple of exciting, things I think to share with everyone about how the pilot's been going. But then we have a really exciting opportunity to work in partnership with the state to expand the program, which we'll talk to you about as well. So we'll go through some programmatic and some budget updates on the existing pilot, and then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that expansion program, which again, the state program is called the Municipal Infrastructure Program. And that was the grant that you all gave us permission to apply for a couple months ago. So if you go to page 3, we'll just as a reminder for folks, because I know some of you all were in council when we got the pilot approved, and some weren't. So again, last spring, we worked with council to approve the budget and kind of the scope for the community broadband program pilot, which again was a 3-year pilot program for 10 or 11 census tracts in kind of the near west side and sort of the south side, at least a portion of the south side. So that's kind of the area shaded in blue on the map. Includes neighborhoods like Brighton, obviously the near west side, and I think technically southwest neighborhood. And so we were able to get under contract with our broadband partner, which is called Community Broadband Networks. They're based out of the Finger Lakes region. I think some of them are here with us today to answer any technical questions folks might have. But we got under contract in July, so it took a few months, as it usually does. But then by October, we were able to launch SurgeLink, which, again, one of the things that I think we were excited about and we had talked about when we met with you all to get the pilot approved was how the technology we decided to use, which is not fiber to every home, it is a fixed wireless network or service. One of the benefits of it is how quickly we can get a network stood up with that technology. Obviously, you don't have to wait to lay fiber, to every single doorstep. And so, as we said, it took about 3 months to really get the network up and running. We did a big launch. I think a lot of you were there with us at the Syracuse Housing Authority to launch that program in October. And really, as of April, we had about 650-ish subscribers, which is really great. So we're hoping to really, again, achieve our goal, which is 2,500 households by the end of this calendar year. As we said, when we launched the program, we thought it would take a year or so to really hit that full subscription rate. And typically, when programs like this are launched, you sort of see an exponential growth factor, if you will. So sort of starts out slow and then, continues to ramp up. And so that's kind of what we're seeing today. Any questions just about the where, what, who?
So as far as the number currently reached versus what the projected number was, do you think that some of the ones that haven't come over to the Surge Link was based on the free services or partially free services that were already being given?
It's interesting. I think we anticipated it would be, a modest ramp up. Again, it's a brand new service. You have to raise people's interest and expectations. Of course, what we've seen when we talk to other communities where there's a municipal broadband program, there is a layer of distrust or uncertainty because it's, government. It's a government service. And so there's just a lot of communications, community outreach and engagement that goes into, getting subscribers. But as more and more people do subscribe, what we find is, they tell their friends and neighbors, it builds trust and it builds an understanding of what the service is and how it works. One thing that we are expecting to see, and it's a little early to really see it, but I think in the next month or two we'll have a good idea, is with the expiration of the Affordable Connectivity Program at the federal level, our service, which we are now charging, $10 a month as an introductory rate for folks to sign up for, with the balance of the cost being subsidized by the city, that is much more affordable than the other services that are on the market. Most people have, I think, an option for Spectrum. There are a few folks, not too many in our pilot footprint, that might have Fios or Verizon as an option too. But regardless, our service is very competitive at $10 or even $15 a month compared to those other services. So I think
Do we compete at pair with the others?
I'm sorry.
In terms of service, do we compete at pair?
Yeah, so let's actually flip to, well, we'll get there in a minute.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah,
About the
please.
service. So I know we mentioned before when you talked about SurgeLink. Have you, right now it's $10. It's great,
Right.
right? So we're looking at today, but as we continue to build on, more people receive the services, did we get an agreement where it's going to be capped? Because everything's, sounds good today. And then once the
so
city...
we'll talk a lot about kind of the plan for the business model moving forward, because it is, we do need to think about how we sustain this program over time. And the hope would be that we have a plan to make this very sustainable, in the long term. So
So wait a minute. So back to it. You don't have so I know you want to talk about, but I have a question. Do you have a cap for that? Is there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so right now, just in the pilot for those 2,500 households, for example, our cap is $15 or $14.99 a month. And then we'll talk about the plan for expansion. Basically, we're going to look to mirror that in the expansion footprint as well for the folks that qualify from an income perspective. One of the things that we do want to do, again, we'll talk about it because we'd love to get your feedback on it. I think to participate in the state program, we do need to expand service to everyone. So I think we are looking to shift. The pilot was really framed as a service or a solution for lower income families. This now becomes an opportunity for us to expand that so we can include, all families. I think we would look to price that in such a way where folks that can afford, internet will pay a higher rate. That will ultimately help us to sustain the network for everyone. And ultimately, that's how we achieve, really sustainability for the program where ARPA and other sources of funds, dry up
How
over
long
time.
is this
So-
$15 for?
Well, so again, the pilot program that you all approved was a 3-year program, which would mean, 3 years from last July, so July of 2026. And that's really what we have funding right now to support from a local subsidy perspective. So again, assuming, let's just assume that the federal government does not put another affordable connectivity program in place. The only subsidy available for households, for SurgeLink, or really, frankly, for any of our internet providers here, is the local subsidy that we've decided to provide with some of our ARPA funds. Now, hopefully, we can still work with our friends in DC, and maybe we'll see another federal subsidy introduced, but we don't know when and how much and all of those things. So
So if it doesn't happen, what could it be, like the price that you're talking
well,
about?
so again, I think that's where we do have to start to talk about.
Well, the price for the consumer, the price for the city are two different things.
Right.
Well, so
Both.
Right.
right. The price for the city is is fairly minimal because we've already made the capital investment in the infrastructure itself. That was kind of one of the benefits of using ARPA, make the investment in the infrastructure. This is where I think, talking about expanding service to include other families outside of the folks, who we're trying to provide assistance to, again, it helps us to make that sustainable even beyond the 3-year pilot, right? Because folks that pay more of a market rate for internet will essentially, that's basically, you can think about it as profit, for example, those funds basically can help to subsidize the folks that we would offer a discount
So
to.
Jen, so my whole thing is like we continue to do a lot of pilots here in the city, right? And then the future, right? We think in 3 years is really right around the corner, a year and a half
Right.
really now. So if the federal government, DC, decides not to give it to us,
Right.
we changed our infrastructure, we've supported our community to get these units, and then we're gonna have to go up on the prices just like it. So like that's the thing. I want people when they go into this to understand that this is a pilot, right? It could change. We're working on it, but it's not. Like they need to know because
Yeah.
it's a whole change, especially for older people, right? When it's time for it's already difficult for them. So when you have to keep switching them and changing them, and 1 minute it's 15, and then in a year and a half we're gonna say, well, we got to do 30. Like we have to be transparent with
Yeah, I mean, our hope in the plan and what we're really working toward is to avoid, any price increase beyond, kind of that $15, which we think is the sustainable target price for a family that qualifies as a, family that needs internet assistance. So I think if we spend a little bit of time talking about, kind of what that looks like, it should hopefully become a little bit more clear, but
Give me a second, Jen. I do have a question, and if it's in here
Yeah.
and you want to say it's on page blah, 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 we'll get to it, you can do
Yeah.
that. So based on, because you're saying that there's a possibility of expanding to everyone, and that it was first rolled out for individuals with lower incomes, where would everyone be? Because apparently you marketed it first within certain neighborhoods.
Right.
Where's the expansion for that? Where would that be? And
Yeah.
is there a possibility, based on what Councilor Caldwell concern is, for a sliding scale?
Right, yeah, and that is essentially the plan, right? So then there's two types of expansion. So think about expansion within the pilot footprint. So we've already, made an investment and implemented broadband infrastructure, right? The technology that enables the connectivity in a particular part of the city. Right now, we are limiting who can get that service to a certain subset of the population. So you could expand that eligibility to be, more than just lower income families, potentially to include all families, right, in that pilot footprint. That's, that could be done tomorrow, frankly, because we already have the technology in place to serve that area.
So it's based on the application,
Well,
or the applicant, basically.
yeah, exactly right. Today it's limited to, and if you go to page 4, this is just, again, kind of a reminder of how it was scoped. And this was scoped this way initially to essentially mirror the Affordable Connectivity Program eligibility criteria. So, essentially, if you participate in any federal assistance program today, SNAP, public housing, free and reduced school lunch, which, for us is great because it basically means any family with a kid in, Syracuse City School District, or if the family is, at 200% of the federal poverty level. So that's kind of how you qualify today, but if you are outside of those parameters, you can't subscribe to SurgeLink, basically. So there's an opportunity, again, for the pilot area where we currently have service operating today. If you live in the near west side or Brighton, any of us, if we lived in those areas, could potentially be a subscriber to SurgeLink. And we would, of course, look to charge families that can afford it, more of a market rate for internet. And we'll talk about what we think that is in a minute. That helps to sustain and provide a discount to the families that, need assistance to pay their internet bill, right? So that's kind of on the pilot side.
Can I get my question before we roll on? I've flipped through and I haven't seen it. Current conditions. We're getting federal money from the Affordable Connectivity Plan, or plan, ACP.
Yeah.
Current conditions, $10 per month. What is the per unit subsidy, the local subsidy under the current conditions?
$20 a month.
So
That's what the city is.
we're currently paying 20. If
to
the
discount.
federal
Right.
money goes away at the $10 rate, what does that become?
So that is when the federal money has basically already gone away. So the population that had signed up for service before, I think, February 8th are still receiving a subsidy. That subsidy is going to essentially probably dry up any day now. It was like part of May was going to be subsidized, but we couldn't enroll any new subscribers after February 8th. So starting February 8th, if you signed up for SurgeLink on February 9th, you are being charged $10 a month. If you signed up on February 7th, you're getting a subsidy through probably this week. But generally speaking, the program is basically, it's expired for all intents.
So if I take the 10 plus 20, we get to $30
Right.
per household.
Right.
If we scale from 650 to 2,500, is it still $30 per unit?
Yes.
There's no.
Yeah, all of the
Okay.
pricing was done based on assumptions about, how many folks we could bring onto the service, capacity of the networks, all of that kind of stuff. And essentially, when we get to the expansion, the physical network expansion to other parts of the city, you'll see a couple of things that we try to do is really, first of all, maintain the $15 a month target for families that qualify. Obviously, add in a market rate plan for families that can afford to pay for internet at home, and then of course start to physically expand the footprint into other parts of the city where. Again, we see today pretty low utilization of internet compared to the region, the state, and others, and so that's really, I think, kind of the opportunity here. So,
Thank you.
yeah, of course.
Let me ask you one more question.
Yeah.
before you move. The federal poverty guidelines change almost every year. So if you signed up at a certain,
Right.
whatever that guideline was in
Right.
last year,
Right.
and it changes this year, are you then transferred to the next level, or are you kept where you signed?
So typically there would be like an annual recertification. So, you qualify initially, you sign up, and then a year later, our partners are going to require you to resubmit, information. If you submitted, based on income.
Right, you get a job and then.
Right, yeah, exactly. So you would check that way. And assuming, there's probably in the fine print, like if you do get a job a few months later, you're probably supposed to notify us. But I think we would typically we would do an annual recertification to kind of force the question.
Go to the next.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
One more question.
Sure. This is good. Good questions.
So, so you said that in order for DC or the state to fund this, that you need to be able to provide it to some sort of everyone. But is there a
Right.
number? Because like you
Yep.
stated that people may not have wanted to sign up for it because of the government and non-trust. But I think it's just more or less familiar and
Right.
unfamiliar. Like they know Spectrum,
Right.
they know these other people,
Right.
they don't know this.
Right.
And so is there a number that DC is looking for in order to do so? Because people may still say, I'm going to stay over here.
Yeah, so we will get into that in a couple of slides because we did model out what we think the anticipated take rate is for expansion. We did it's the state that is administering the municipal infrastructure program. So we've reported to them what we think the likely numbers are. Ultimately at the end of the day, the investment in like the physical infrastructure for the most part is kind of agnostic of how many people we get signed up. There is the ability to be reimbursed for some of the in-home equipment. And so, that's really the one variable cost that, to your point, like we'd want to make sure we try to hit our targets so that we get the full reimbursement from the state on that piece. But the vast, vast majority of the project budget for the expansion is going to be reimbursed by the state regardless of, if we get 100 more subscribers or 1,000. Granted, again, we do want to try to hit, the target numbers. And, to your point, Counselor, it's just going to be about, making sure we have continuous, marketing, advertising, education. We do a lot with a lot of our community partners. We're going to be doing, obviously, even more to work with community organizations to get the word out. We'll be expanding hopefully into parts of the north side and the valley. So very active, community organizations there. I think we'll look to try to really leverage some of those partners to help us get the word out, right? And talk about how this is a really good option if you live in those neighborhoods. And today your only option is,
You have a target date for the north side?
So, not really, because we don't yet have a grant agreement
Okay.
presented to us by the state. So, they had kind of given us early indication they wanted to be very aggressive with the program. They're using state ARPA money for the program, so they have the same December 2026 deadline as we have to spend our ARPA money. So, I do think we'll hear back from them like this week, next week. They want to be under contract by June. Which is why we wanted to have this meeting with you all, now. Hopefully, and we'll get into the timeline for the expansion project in a little bit. So, I think we'll probably be in a position where between like fall of 24 to spring of 25, we'll have the expansion, really substantially in place, covering, pretty much the entire area. But it will depend, obviously, on how quickly we get a contract with the state. We'll need to amend our contract with our internet service provider partner as well. And so hopefully we can do that stuff pretty quickly. And then, again, the good news about using this technology is you can get network assets in place relatively quickly. We will need to probably do some permitting and things like that. So, we're hoping the network is fully in place in the full expansion footprint by next spring at the latest.
So you won't be competing with Spectrum, because is Spectrum more greater internet speed than what we are proposing here?
Not necessarily. So,
So people could drop Spectrum to
yes.
come here?
Yes.
Okay.
That is.
Or others.
Or others, exactly right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're not, in fact, if you go to slide 6, real quick, and this is again specific to the pilot. We have a similar slide for the expansion area. So, right now we are offering essentially 100 download speed, 100 upload speed service, which is considered, kind of, well, it's becoming more the industry standard for broadband, but it's very, high connectivity. Most people, really use more download speed than they use upload speed, but the upload speed becomes a differentiator. As you can see, we've got, 2 other services in our pilot footprint today. The income eligible services that they currently offer for folks that would qualify are, 50 download, 10 upload for provider A at $30 a month. So you can kind of see how we differentiate on service, speed, and cost. Same thing with provider B. Provider B is actually, it's only in a very tiny part of our pilot footprint today, so they're not really even that viable of an option for the vast majority of people. They are in more of the expansion footprint, for sure. But again, at least what we see right now in terms of what they advertise online, their cost for service is a little higher. Now, people might have seen some of the headlines a couple weeks ago. There had been an injunction on a state bill called the Affordable Broadband Act, which just got lifted like a week ago. So that act does require every internet service provider operating in the state of New York to offer a $15 a month plan. So, what we would expect is, frankly, for both provider A and provider B in this case to come out with a different plan. Because right now this is, they have these $30 offerings for, kind of a lower income population. They're going to have a $15 offering. We would, anticipate that probably means they're going to lower speeds to be able to offer a lower offering. That's what we kind of frankly saw, back before the Affordable Connectivity Program, right, years ago. I think there was an internet affordability plan through Spectrum for $15 a month, and it was 25 megabytes down and 3 up, which isn't even considered high-speed internet anymore, according to the Federal Communications Commission.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the difference right there.
Right.
Jen, so it's a 2-part question. When you introduced this before, so as far as the city-wise, are we prepared, like throughout the whole city? So I know we were doing some work, so we're ready and prepared for the whole city to be surging. So we are.
So let's
Wait, okay, so this part 2, so you might have to
I got
answer.
part 3 too.
Okay.
Okay.
And my boy
Let's
Corey got-
let's hold the question on the expansion, because we will get there.
Okay, and then 2, so and then 2 is, what is the cost? So if we are prepared for this, how is does the city have any cost? Like, are we having to do anything? Like, how are you gonna keep everything rolling?
Right. So let's talk about that in a minute. Really quickly, just to close out on the pilot discussion, wanted to make sure you all were aware, in terms of who we're working with most closely today around outreach and rollout, we do have really great partnerships. This is on slide 7 with obviously the Housing Authority, but also the school district and Brady Market are really helping us now with a lot more outreach. We're always looking for additional partners, but I think in that footprint, those are really important ones for us. If folks know of others in that footprint, please let us know. We'll be happy to work with anyone to try to get that word out. And then on slide 8, this is just the current financial picture of the pilot in terms of, what we have budgeted, what we've spent, and what's remaining. Everything is encumbered for this program today, so there's no worries there. And we were planning to, spend through 2026, and that is still the timeline. As I said, our contract is up in July of 2026 for the pilot. And so we'll continue to move forward with that. But this is just, kind of the current state of the community broadband pilot budget. Just wanted to make sure everyone kind of had that in their minds as we talk about expansion now, because obviously the expansion is an additional pot of money, which which is a great opportunity for us, and it will start to get to some of your questions.
Before you move off
Counselor
of the
Caldwell.
pilot,
Still here?
with the
Yeah, of course, still there.
still on something else?
Yeah.
Okay, go Corey.
All right, so SurgeLink, provider A, provider B. I've got provider A, and periodically the internet drops out. Can you talk about reliability? And then in terms of when it does drop out, I can pick up the phone and call someone local. Can
Yeah.
you talk about service and reliability?
Yeah, you guys want to take that?
Thank you.
Morning, councilors. James Orioli from CBN, partners with SurgeLink here. So just to speak on reliability, what we do often is we check in with the city, and we do have weekly meetings. So we see next to us Vincent and Jen. Oftentimes we provide them KPI reports, which are key performance indicators, and which we just looked at them. I just did an average of all the KPIs that we've provided. Just to answer the specific question to reliability, we're at 99.98% reliability. Now, there's no doubt about it that if you speak to somebody that you're friends with in the city that potentially has SurgeLink and they say, look, it's dropped out once or twice before, it's a normal part of the process. However, as an overall image of what we are in reliability, because of the fixed wireless, a little bit different than what you see maybe on wireline. Wireline's susceptible to a lot of the things that we are not. So for example, weather, incidents on accidents, power lines going down, any sort of street work. There's a lot of hands that are involved with wireline connectivity. You have LIPA, you have everybody else involved with on the utility side, which is us, we're a completely independent infrastructure. So SurgeLink is totally independent. There's a little device that sits on someone's house. There's devices, there's transmitters that sit all throughout the city. And so it's a one-to-one connection for every individual person that's there. So it's really more reliable than what you would have on a wireline side. And then plus all of the transmitters, they do have then redundant backup links just in case there was to be, let's just say, a wireline cut. We have redundancy throughout the network. Then to answer your second question, just in regards to, call it serviceability, all of our call centers are locally based. So we have a call center currently in Syracuse, right off West Genesee, and then we have another call center in the Finger Lakes area that also supports us in a backup level if we do get high demand.
Gotcha. And so the 99.98%, is that assuming 24-hour day,
24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
650 units, so the 0.02 is spread across 24 hours per 650, and then we get the amount
That
of
is
time
correct.
that it's done. Thank you.
Of course.
I'm good, thank you.
All right. The moving into the possible expansion, did you guys have to collect any data as to the households that primarily use SurgeLink for work, for school, or for like doctor's appointment calls and things like that? Like, did you have that information?
Yeah, so we didn't actually look too closely at, kind of the existing customers when we were thinking about expansion, other than to look at those KPIs that James was just referencing, to make sure we understood like overall utilization as well as, service quality and things like that to make sure, obviously we were comfortable with the same type of service, expanding to other parts of the city. I'll turn it over to Vinny, who's going to talk a lot more about some of the factors that went into expansion. We did look at a lot of data about kind of the rest of the city to help us select the next areas for expansion, because again, we're, while this is a great grant, it's a nice, chunk of money from the state, we won't be able to necessarily expand completely citywide yet. So this kind of gets us a good portion of the way there. But we did have to make some calls about where to target, expansion moving forward. So I'll turn it over to Vinny. He'll be able to talk you through that.
Thanks, Jen. Good morning, councilors. Vinny Scipione, Smart City Manager, working with Jen on SurgeLink here. And so to answer your question further, with the planning of the expansion here, we currently on our website have our form that anyone can sign up for. And if they're not in the footprint of our current, service area, then we're able to, keep the inquiry there and say, and we've frankly mapped it out and said, okay, we can see there's hundreds of requests, quite literally, outside of our current footprint and where that aligns with. But it's a combination of not only that, but the same methodology that was used to initially select our phase one footprint was based on American Community Survey data that showed the largest gaps in connectivity. So leveraging multiple data sets, not only the ones that we're collecting, but the same data sets that were used to determine the phase one footprint. So the municipal infrastructure program focuses on a couple things. It's last mile, open access, and public broadband network. So those three components, last mile meaning that connectivity to the home, which we, of course, are already doing. The open access component, which brings the opportunity for additional operators to operate on this infrastructure. And then the public aspect, which is, of course, being publicly owned or controlled. So the biggest differentiator in this expansion program through New York State is the fiber aspect, right? Because obviously we've made that investment in the fixed wireless component. It is shown so far to be successful, and that also, we believe, is one of the reasons why we think we're competitive in this grant program, is because we already have a program that's up and running. And fixed wireless is something that we've seen nationwide being picked up by multiple communities. We're, we're an adopter of the technology, but it's, being proven to be competitive with other current options. So as you can see on slide 11 there, current phase 1 footprint and phase 2 which would be covered by our, this next expansion phase. Moving forward on slide 12, these are the major components of it. Like I said, there's those three major parts. The fiber aspect, this would allow us, well, and just to touch on it too, like I said, the dollar amounts here are, of course, larger than our initial pilot that we, rolled out, and that's because largely in part of the fiber investment. Fiber is much more expensive than the fixed wireless equipment, but it's also, a technology that we're going to be able to invest in and have future-proof for a long, long time. Fiber is technically the gold standard, and it's going to act as that backhaul, the core infrastructure to our network and other networks. So the 20 miles of fiber that would be ran with this also allows for us to connect other municipal buildings directly. So not only, serving, it's multifaceted, not just using it for the end user service, but we're going to be able to connect multiple fire departments, the new SPD, SFD headquarters, other municipal buildings such as that to, really be able to double down on this investment.
This is all in the grant.
Correct. This is all within it. Yep. Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about the lifespan of the fiber. So the infrastructure, what are we projecting for lifespan of that? Basically until we move to a different technology, or what? And then talk about the investment in terms of the user and what they need at their home. And kind of as we shift with technology, now we're at Wi-Fi 6, right? What happens when we get to Wi-Fi 11? Are we still able, and what additional expenditures do we need in that transition as technology evolves?
Absolutely. So yes, fiber is the technology for the foreseeable future. That is the capacity of fiber itself. As we progress in the digital era, right? More and more data requirements are necessary, but fiber has the capacity to, sustain 10 times, 50 times what we're currently utilizing, right? So it's really not a concern from like a capacity infrastructure perspective, like what's the next big thing that's going to be coming. So
You have to do so with any technology. This is considering for the grant, but then the following year, like you still have updates and stuff. Who's handling that?
Yeah. So to the next part of, as that's from the backbone perspective, as we progress through different wireless technology, so on and so forth. Our current price that we offer to folks is inclusive of all of the equipment. So when a router, or when someone subscribes, they get all the in-home equipment, including the router and all the other, the installation fee, so on and so forth, is all inclusive. So yes, as technology progresses, we will need. Sorry.
Just to answer your question, Councilman, and specifically in the technology, because I know that that's obviously something that we all see changing. We have new iPhones every month. It's the iPhone 15, 17. Things are constantly changing, so I understand the question. What we use as the actual service delivery is a technology called Tirana, And so that's what happens. So there's fiber that's going to be running to all these transmission points, but to actually deliver that service, so as Vincent mentioned, fiber is going to be in the future, whether it be burial, whether it be aerial, that's constantly going to have that same network life that it always has, which is running around 25 to 30 years. However, on the wireless side, we do see that changing a lot quicker. So I'm sure your concern is, okay, what does that look like for the city's investment on the Tirana? Tirana has always looked to this into the future. I don't work for Tirana. We had a very competitive process with the city on what technology we're to use. Tirana did explain this to us, and this is really ultimately what we ended up selecting, in that they currently, right now, what they have is called their G1 program, which is devices that physically sit in the home, let's just call it, has 1x the capacity. But without any sort of change in hardware at all, this is what they have said over the course of $300 million worth of research and development that they've put into it. A G2 program is going to be running through, I would say, right around 2026, and that what that's going to do is allow double the amount of capacity and also double the amount of speed, but without any change of hardware. All that will is simply firmware update. So everything will remain on the household. There won't be any additional cost from the city at all. And again, as you consider this in the context of the overall city, I'm sure everyone thinks, okay, there's a lot of wireless devices that constantly, our homes are becoming smarter. There's all this new wireless technology. How can you have so much space in the wireless spectrum, call it, to transmit this data? What that G2 technology does, it allows extra capacity. We enter into different levels of spectrum, all at no cost to the city. So again, that's something that as we see technology change, we'll be able to keep up with increased demand for speed, so such that is in the future, if that FCC requirement of 100 over 100 goes to, let's just say, something higher, and the city wants to make sure that they're in compliance and providing their constituents the best speed, there will not be any out-of-pocket costs for the city to get there.
And in terms of, when will we know if the prices that we set, whether they be $10 or $15, when will we know if operationally we're meeting our target? Basically, do our revenues meet the cost of operation? When
Yes.
will we know that?
So when we designed the program, which we did hand in hand with the city, we designed a business model in order to, as you mentioned, and I think a lot of the questions are, how do we know that we won't need extra money for maintenance, or what are those unexpected costs coming down the line, and how will we have the money to do so? And so the overhead costs that, again, the city needs to incur in order to maintain this network took all that into consideration. So we've been in business for a long time. Steve here, my partner, has been in business for over 25 years in the private telecom space. We own and operate our own private telecom space, so we have over 3,000 subscribers throughout the Finger Lakes and Rochester area. So we do see our numbers ourselves. We applied that to the model of the city because ultimately the city is getting into the business of being a provider. And then we came up with a number that said, okay, this is what that fixed number is going to be for the duration of our contract, in addition to any expansion to the contract. So us as the overall maintainer of the network, we're locked into that number. So any maintenance that goes into it, if there's any failures, let's just say any equipment failures, any service that goes into it, we have that cost covered. That's something that we consider. Now, on the larger scale of things, yeah, should the city want to expand over the course of time, that's what Jen mentioned, there is going to be a market price that will ultimately create a sense of profit that will allow the city to ultimately be able to grow the program, future investments, larger scale. But on the day-to-day maintenance and operations, that's what we take care of.
So zero cost, you're saying?
Well, there's no additional, there's no hidden cost. There's nothing that could be future incurred.
So I just want to make clear, so if there's something as far as equipment, any fiber optic issue, it's zero.
We maintain all of that.
Okay.
We do it on a regular basis. Such
How long?
that, as long as we're in contract with the city, of course.
For right now.
As of right now, yeah. But I mean, we do it all the time. I mean, it's natural, kind of natural progression. There'll be other, providers up there. They'll knock a piece of equipment off or whatever it is. We send our deployer team out, which everyone's locally based, locally staffed, and we handle all the upkeep and maintenance.
I think this is great that we have opportunity, but I have to be very transparent, and I've talked to Jen. I'm just concerned in our budget, Frank, how are we going to sustain this in 3 years, and where is this coming from?
So at this point, the goal, Counselor, is for the program to be self-sustaining. That's what we are seizing an opportunity that I don't think we expected to expand the project much more quickly than we anticipated. When the state came through with this opportunity, they kind of the same situation that everybody else is in. They needed to spend down ARPA money, and they look to make large investments in this. So the short answer is the program needs to be self-sustaining. The state will require that it be self-sustaining, so all the revenue needs to be sitting in a fund that goes solely to support the program and the expansion of the program. So what we need to be careful of is that we don't grow more quickly. We don't grow the program itself, the footprint of the program, as Jen called it, any more quickly than the revenues will support it. So the revenues have to be able to support the program as we grow. So would we like to think that there'll be another infusion of capital from outside the program itself? Sure, but I don't know where that would come from. So this kind of fell from the sky, and we're taking advantage of it. If something else falls from the sky, we'll take advantage of that. But until then, program can only expand as quickly as it has revenues to support it.
So phase 3 that we don't have here, but the presumed phase 3, we're gonna have to wait for another $12 million grant from
Phase 3,
somebody.
it's going to require CapEx from outside,
Yeah.
or it's going to require that the program be so stupendously successful that it generates sufficient revenues to do it. The advantage of this, and I don't want this point to be lost, the advantage of the technology that we're using is it's not that there is no capital expense, there is. It is much less capital intensive than the competition. So we are able to get up and running faster and less expensively than the competing technologies.
So
On
are
the
they,
infrastructure,
go ahead.
on the infrastructure side, I know I asked this about 3 months ago. Yeah, we've been waiting for this meeting for a while. And you just mentioned, as far as the aerial or burial portion of the fiber, like what, are we looking at that right now? Which one do we know? Because I know we implemented, dig once, and we want to make sure that with all of the things that are happening throughout the city, that we're not constantly burdening the residents with more work.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a combination throughout this expansion footprint of aerial and burial. It's just depending on the terrain and what's best for that. We are in discussions to align this with any dig once, initiative that's currently underway.
Okay.
Yeah, typically what you would find, especially in our city, you can just kind of see it when you're out looking. I pay more attention to poles and wires than I ever used to. But in our core downtown, we would expect burial, obviously. But as we get out into the neighborhoods, the more kind of common approach is aerial. So we don't have to necessarily dig up neighborhood streets. We may have to implement some new poles, for example. But really, there should be relatively little disruption as it relates to, and because we're not running fiber to the home, we don't need to run, a wire to someone's house from the street, right? So it should be relatively little disruption, right? But if we can coordinate from a dig once perspective, we'll do the same thing we're doing right now for road work, water work, et cetera, where we obviously notify folks that there will be work in an area, and hopefully we will be able to take advantage of coordinating schedules so that it's a single notice and try to limit disruption as much as possible.
Just to add to the point there for you, Councilwoman. So as an overall perspective on the amount of households we're covering with this expansion, it's about 14,000 homes which we'll offer coverage to. By doing so with the fixed wireless technology, we're ultimately being able to run, call it 221 fiber miles. By using the fixed wireless technology, we only physically need to run 20.
Okay.
So that's a huge comparison. So if we were to do this all fiber to the home, trust me, there would be a tremendous amount of disruption. It's 221 miles of fiber that we'd be running. We offer the same thing with just using 20.
Jen, going back to the sustainability before we get away from it, and just as a question, so if we're going to be subscribing people at market rate, as we can, so that is probably part of the sustainability of the program.
Right.
So what % of our subscribers should be market rate so we can sustain the full 100%?
Yeah, it's a good question. So just because I think it's pertinent to this question, if you go to slide 14, this essentially is the kind of the plan from a cost per subscriber perspective. So again, we would cap the income eligible population at $15 a month. The market rate for everyone else would be $36.99 per month. And then, Rita, I think to your question, basically, I think our model has it right now where of all of our subscribers, we've got 60% at market rate and 40% at the subsidy rate.
Subsidy rate.
And again, in part, we designed, kind of the model using some of the experience that CBN has had in the other markets that they work in, where again, we expect we will attract both, families that are currently subscribing, to the existing providers today. Maybe they aren't income eligible, but they want to switch because it's, pretty good service for really not as much at $36.99. But then, of course, our hope is we can capture a large number of families that really can't afford internet, and we want to make sure they're connected.
And if we're going to add the municipal services to it, then we're paying ourselves to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we can kind of decrease some of our own spectrum bills, essentially,
That's what I
because
meant, yeah.
that's what we use at the fire stations, and yeah.
How many staff
Provider
do you have with
A.
you? How many staff is in your team?
So it's just Vinny and I. But we do, we lean very heavily, obviously, on our provider. So the CBN team is, really great to work with. They're the ones that are really doing day-to-day operations and maintenance for the network. So, we're really providing, program management, oversight, obviously reporting, to make sure that the service levels are appropriate. But if someone has a internet outage, they're not going to call me or Vinny. So, so we've got like a pretty large bench of, staff that are supporting the program. And I think, to be able to outsource, a program like this is really important for a city like ours where, we don't have in-house, telecommunications network engineering experience, right? Very specialized type of engineering. So it'd be hard to be able to really operate a program like this out of our engineering department or our public works department. Although there are some communities that have taken, kind of it in-house. But I think, we can continue to sort of outsource the operations and maintenance of a program like this, and focus more on kind of the programmatic, achievement.
I know that you said that the state was using their pot of ARPA funding. I thought that at somewhere you mentioned that you wanted to utilize a portion of some remaining ARPA funds.
Yes. So if you go to slide 13, this is kind of the budget for the grant. So you'll probably remember when we applied for the grant, so this grant was there was not a match required. But as we were getting ready to apply for the grant, of course, there were a lot of questions and speculation about would we be more competitive if we had some skin in the game. We did have initially when we, kind of put our ARPA plan together a couple of years ago, we had sized the broadband investment at $5 million. So, we'd only, authorized 3.5 to date. So, in our application to the state, we did commit $1.4 million to the overall project budget to leverage their 10.8, which is, again, a really great opportunity, I think. And, I think it did, frankly, make us a bit more competitive than if we asked the state to fund it 100%. But we thought that was still a very good leverage ratio for, an investment in this case.
The 1.4 is coming from where?
So it would be authorized as a part of the legislative package that we have before you all. Yeah. One thing that I think we probably do need to do, so again, I was trying to be really proactive putting all of the legislation together as a package, but I think since we we were hoping to get a grant award by the end of April. The state is obviously a little delayed. We just had a really good call with them last week, but we still don't have a formal award yet. So I think we'll need to probably hold the 2 pieces of legislation because we're obviously not going to amend our contract with the provider until we know we've got the grant award. So we'll look to hopefully have you all approve the legislation that gives us the authority to enter into contract with the state if and when, or when and if, however you look at it, we get the grant award, which is hopefully like any day now. And then, if it's held, it'll still be on the agenda. So when we do hear back from the state, the very next council agenda, we can vote on the amendments that would be
What's the
necessary.
number of the award? How much?
So on slide 13, it's 10.8 million in state funds. So the total project budget is 12.2.
So, Jen, you guys already told the state you're gonna do 1.4 before you came to us. So.
We applied for the grant after we received permission to apply for the grant.
Yeah, but did we already accept the 1.4 to go towards the grant?
No, but
We just
I mean,
agreed that they
now
could
I think
apply.
we are at the point where we would look to do that. So, we put together a very competitive grant package and, we've gotten, I think, conditional approval at this point. So at the end of the day, we wanted to wait until we had an actual grant award before we,
Move forward.
got full approval for the city funding plus
No,
the state funding.
I understand that part, and I'm just trying to clarify. I understand it. I remember when we came and you guys asked for the grant, we were like, yes, let's go for
Yeah.
it. But in the grant, when you came to us, I don't recall you guys saying that you guys were gonna put in the grant 1.4
At the time that we
million.
asked for permission to apply, I don't think we necessarily knew what even the budget was. I think when we asked to apply, we actually just applied, or we asked to apply for the maximum that the state was willing to give, which is $30 million. Obviously, just because of the timing of, the council meetings, we needed to get permission. We were still working on the actual application. So when it all shook out, it turned out we didn't necessarily need 30 million. We went for a lower amount that we thought would be more competitive, but we felt we needed, to put a little skin in the game. Normally, if there is a minimum required, like an actual amount that is required by the state as a local match, we have to advise you of that. But in this case, there was no local match required. So we kind of made the call from an administrative perspective that, the budget for the project needed to, look like this in order to make it doable.
Anything else as far as that, anything that you want us to focus on in the, well, I
I
guess that's really
feel
kinda
like
it.
with all of your really good questions, we've probably covered
Okay.
pretty much everything in here, but does anyone have any other questions? Okay, well, thank you all for your time today and for the good questions. It is a really exciting opportunity, I think for the community and hopefully sets us up, to, well for future expansion, whatever that looks like and whenever that happens. But we're kind of taking a bite of the elephant, like one piece at a time here.
I was going to ask you, now you're going to have your own operations, so when there's an issue, they're going to numbers to call.
Yep, so it's actually just going to be exactly the same operating center that exists today for the pilot. So, because we have a pilot operation in place, we get to basically scale that up and basically leverage the same thing. So the 800 number and the email address and all of that a subscriber would use today is going to be exactly the same as
It'll
we
be here.
expand.
It'll be here in Syracuse?
It is.
Have a
It is here in
location?
Syracuse. Yep.
It'll have its own truck, its own delivery?
It does already. Yes.
Okay, so we'll create some more jobs.
Jen, it's not even about Surge, but it's still about the Wi-Fi and the fiber. The program that you guys were overseeing with the North Side.
Yes, the digital empowerment
Digital,
program.
how is that going? Is that
Yeah, so the digital empowerment program, I think, has officially wrapped up, at least with regard to the city's support, right? That was a one-year allocation of ARPA funds. We can get you some information because I don't have all the data in front of me, but very successful. I think, they were able to serve probably close to double the number of residents that were in the, proposal originally. It was citywide, so not just focused on our pilot area. Unfortunately, our funding commitment, kind of wrapped up. I know they're in the process right now of looking for additional funding sources. I think they have scaled back the program as a result. We are expecting a very large opportunity to come. It probably won't materialize until the end of this calendar year, but the state, I think folks probably remember seeing some news when the infrastructure bill passed at the federal level, there was a lot of money included for broadband. Digital inclusion and digital equity services was one area that the federal government is going to put a lot of money into. That money flows through the state, so it'll flow through the state's Connect All office. The Connect All office right now is working on its digital equity plan, so it has to have its plan in place, and then it will issue grants, kind of like it did for this municipal infrastructure program. So they've kind of said, it will be probably closer to the end of the calendar year, like winter, that they will put a request for applications out. It's not clear to me yet whether municipalities would apply or whether nonprofits and service providers like the Northeast Community Center or some of our other community centers could apply directly. The city will obviously, I think, be very willing to provide technical assistance if it is nonprofits that have to apply. But we do want to make sure, programs like that are able to scale, with that federal money because it's a really big opportunity. But I do think they're kind of actively looking for other sources of grant funds to be able to sustain that program.
Right, because they hired a lot of people on that.
They hired 4 digital navigators and a program manager. The program manager is still in place, so I think Northeast is able to sustain that individual. They're still, I think, able to provide certain services. Obviously, they're applying for grants and doing that kind of work, which is really important. Until the federal money through the state really materializes, there just weren't, I think, a lot of opportunities through private philanthropy to fund programs like that. But, we've been talking with them, frankly, about thinking through the relationship between the digital empowerment program and some of their other programs. They closely integrated it with supportive housing, for example, and with their workforce development programming. And there really are a lot of direct relationships there. So, one of the ways that the city can contribute to programs like that in the future is through the community development block grant allocation. But to date, they haven't really coupled that digital empowerment program in with their CDBG application. I think they are probably interested in looking to do that in the future just because of the additional neighborhood development opportunity that a program like digital empowerment gives, especially when you can wrap it into all the wraparound services around supportive employment and supportive housing and that kind of thing. So I do think they'll look to come back to us on that, but they have had to scale down a bit.
So the $12 million plus will give us how many more years of life?
So this will allow us to expand the geographic footprint. We're still going to try to target 2026 to bring, obviously, we're hoping by the end of this year, our initial pilot population will be on board. And then, we'll have the next 2 years to bring on board the additional households. But because, again, the state's using ARPA funds, they've got the 2026 deadline as well. So that really allows us to bring those households on board. And then as we talked about earlier, because we baked in all of the overhead operations maintenance into the cost for service, there is really no cost to, deliver the service beyond those years. At some point, we'll have to obviously re-up the contract for the provider and figure out if we're going to recompete it or, how we're going to do that. But that's, we have a little bit of time to do that. So we will need to think about how we deliver the program beyond 2026, because right now we just have a contract through 2026, but.
And as far as your marketing, I know as you said you work with the school, with Brady and those things, but have you guys collected any data to show like where the individuals who have signed up, where they got that information from?
Yeah, so we're actually right now designing an evaluation of the pilot program with one of our not-for-profit partners called US Ignite, which does a lot of work nationally around these issues of connectivity and digital inclusion. And so you all had approved a contract with them a few months back. So they're working with us right now on that. There will be focus groups and surveys, and I think some of those questions are gonna, really be important for us to look at, right? Like, how did you hear about us? We've started to also build in some pretty basic survey questions like that into the application process itself online, or when you call, if you wanted to subscribe and you called tomorrow, when the CBN team takes your information to get you qualified, they will ask some of those kind of more basic survey questions so we can start to really analyze that data. But when we got the program stood up, I don't think we were going through a whole survey thing with subscribers. But now we do it routinely, and then the evaluation will look to dig into questions like that further. So in the next couple months, we should have the evaluation report so we can take a look at some of the opportunities to improve the pilot, and then any of those findings we can obviously build into the expansion as well.
Yeah, and I think my earlier question should be included in that as well. Are people utilizing it for school,
Yeah, what are you
work,
using it for?
doctor, or all of the above,
Right.
per se? So.
Right, yeah, and I think with that qualitative data, along with some of the quantitative data that the provider is already tracking in terms of, utilization, time, and, how much bandwidth is being utilized at peak times and not peak times, like, we should be able to really have some interesting findings about, is 100 over 100 enough? Should we look to actually expand that? In part, that's the minimum that we're required to do, under ARPA. So that's what we targeted to do. But I think as James was saying earlier, the technology that we've deployed, is capable of supporting, more as well. So we obviously want to right-size the program and think about, ways to tier up service as well, which especially as we start reaching out to a broader market for this solution, maybe there is a market at more than $37 for more than 100 over 100. We're not there yet. I don't think we necessarily want to have 7 tiers and all of these different, I think that gets confusing, which we all feel probably when we're dealing with internet service providers. So there's a simplicity in having, a single, kind of income eligible tier and then a market rate tier. And 100 over 100 service is pretty good, but we'll be looking at, all of those questions about, how to improve the service over time.
Do you have a guesstimate of when that money will be approved?
For the expansion? Well, like I said, so I was getting a lot of signals throughout April that they were trying to finalize awards in April. Then, something happened at the state level to slow them down. We did have a really good call with that team last week. Very positive conversation. Still no official award yet. But, I do think because they're trying to spend ARPA money, they've got a ticking time clock as well. Like, at the end of the day, it's going to have to be pretty soon because they want to start showing, progress. I think we might hear back from them by the end of this month.
Oh, that's pretty soon.
Yeah, because I do think they probably want to be under contract probably by the end of June, so that new fiscal year, they've got
Excellent.
Partners that are starting to work. So I'll keep you guys abreast, obviously. I think at this point, getting approval to enter into contract with the state, if and when it does come, is going to be very helpful so we can start working on that contract immediately. And then we'll obviously follow up again on the amendments that would be needed to the contract when we have a grant award in hand.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Okay.
Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate your time, and we will call this meeting to order. Close out the meeting.
So moved.
So move.
Second.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.